I had an experience this week that I've been hesitant about coming on here to this channel and making a video about and telling you about what happened and how I handled what happened and how it's kind of stayed with me here over the last few days. I actually called a good friend of mine this morning, a man who's older than me, a man who I consider wise, I think, to kind of enlist his help in talking me out of making this video. I told him about what happened, this particular situation that happened a few days ago, and how I handled it. And he kind of thought I shouldn't make this video either. And he asked me a series of qualifying questions, dequalifying questions actually, in his attempt to convince me not to make this video and tell you about what happened and how I handled it. But his final question, which he meant to be the biggest disqualifying question, actually ended up being the biggest qualifying question as to why I'm making this video. And that question was, are you really the guy that needs to make this video? And in more ways than I think he could imagine, the answer is a resounding yes. And I think by the time you get to the end of this video and you understand what happened and how I handled what happened, you'll agree. So here's what happened. I was in town. I was down in Charlottesville this week with some friends. I was helping some friends do something. The exact thing we were doing is not really pertinent for this story. What is pertinent is that one of our friends had brought one of their friends that none of us knew. He was a guy in his probably in his late 50s. I engaged this guy in small talk at one point. Okay. Here's something about Charlottesville that if you're not, if you've never lived here, you wouldn't know. Most people that you meet, a good many people that you meet in Charlottesville are not from Charlottesville. It's a very transient town. A lot of folks come and go with their association with the University of Virginia. There's a big medical community here. UVA is arguably the best hospital in the world in many areas, especially the treatment of brain injuries, brain surgeries. Martha Jefferson Hospital is here. They're a very wonderful hospital as well. There's a VA outpatient clinic where I get help when I need it, and they're wonderful. So there's a big medical community. There's an intelligence community here. There's no active Army or military installation, but there are several different intelligent outlets. So we have the military personnel and the civilian contractors coming and going. So a question that you commonly ask someone you've just met in Charlottesville is, are you from here? And majority of the time the answer is no. And then so you follow up with, where are you from? Well, I talked to this gentleman. I said, hey, so are you from here? Small talk. No, I used to be, but I moved to Roanoke. Where are you from? Well, I grew up in West Virginia, but I came here originally about 20 years ago. I left for a while, but I've come back and I'm here to stay. I like it. And he says, I was here for a while, but I left about 5 years ago. I actually live down in Roanoke now. It's in southwestern Virginia. Wonderful area. I've been down there. It's beautiful. The people I've dealt with down there are beautiful people. He says, you know what I hate about Charlottesville? And I said, what's that? And he says, all the damn Asians. Those are his words, not mine. I was shocked to hear somebody say that. I stood there while he just went off on a tirade about why he hated Asians. He was talking about how he hated, especially when he was walking around the campus at UVA, seeing all those damn Asians. Again, his words, not mine. And he would always ask himself, where are the real Americans, as he put it, the real Americans who work, is how he put it. By this time, I'd gained my composure enough to speak. And I did. I said, hey, I'm stopping you right there. And he stopped and he looked at me confused. And I said, my wife's Asian. My son is biracial. He's half Asian. He's half Caucasian American. I said, I'm leaving your presence right now. I can't stand being in the presence of you for another second. So I'm going to turn around and I'm going to leave. And he said, I'm sorry. I didn't know. And I said, you might not have known that my family is Asian, but you're old enough to know not to be a racist. He goes, man, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I said, look, I'm leaving. I said, but know this as I leave. My Asian wife is in this country legally. She has a social security number. She has a green card. She works and she pays taxes. And then I turned. He continued to apologize. I turned around once more. I said, you've clearly stated your views. That's your right to have those views. It's my right not to be in the presence of you or anybody else who holds such views. I turned around and I left. A couple of the women who were there in our group of friends followed me outside because they were concerned. And they were saying, Kevin, what happened? What happened? Well, I told them. And they were shocked. They were like, oh my God, I can't believe someone would just say that. And one of the women said, I think I know why he said that in your presence, Kevin. And I said, why is that? And she said, well, you told him you moved here from West Virginia, right? That you grew up in West Virginia. I said, yeah. And she goes, he felt comfortable being a racist in your presence because he assumed you might be one too because of where you're from. That hit home in so many ways because just the night before this incident happened, and you can go back and look, the video just before this one that I uploaded just before this one had to do with people assuming things about you when you're from Appalachia, be it West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, the Carolinas, southwestern Virginia. If you go a little further south of Roanoke, you run into it. Southern Pennsylvania. The old Bible Belt, the Rust Belt, and I was making that video in regards to mentioning the book I just read, Hillbilly Elegy. Again, great book. Go read it. Watch the Netflix movie. Not nearly as good as the book. They never are. But on the way home, while I was feeling proud of myself for having stood up to that guy and called him out and left his presence, I had to question, how many times have there been in my past when I've been in a similar situation and I've said nothing? And I hate to say this, but I'm sure I know there are many. In that last video I made, I was talking about how so many people, when they hear that you're from Appalachia, or when they hear your accent, the way you talk, the way you speak, they assume so many things about you that are not true. They assume that you're an ignorant, uneducated hick. You're racist, you're homophobic, you're xenophobic, you're Islamophobic, you're misogynist, all these nasty things that I'm not, and that the majority of the people that I knew or still know in Appalachia are not. And I asked myself this question: how much time over the last quarter of a century or so since I've left Appalachia have I spent playing defense against people who are, let's say, extreme left of center, who make these assumptions that I'm all those terrible, ugly things? How much time have I spent trying to convince them I'm not, because I didn't want them to see me as those terrible, ugly things? The answer is easy. I've spent a lot of time doing that. Trust me, it never gets old. No matter how long I've been gone, I will soon have spent more time outside of West Virginia in my lifetime than I spent in it, okay? Because I'm aging. But to this day, I continue to play that defensive role. But then, for the first time, really, I think, I'm 47. I don't remember ever asking myself this question. How much time have I spent playing defense against folks who are those ugly things that I'm not, who are the opposite extreme of the first group I just mentioned playing defense against? How many times, when those folks have heard that because I'm from Appalachia, then I must be these ugly, terrible things that I'm not, that they are? Sadly, to be honest, I would have to say probably not a lot of time. I can look back and remember being in the presence of people who, come into contact with, certainly not friends. I would never befriend someone with a mentality like this, but maybe they see a white male, they find out where I'm from, and they assume, like this guy did earlier this week, that they can just openly be racist in my presence. How many times has that happened? And I have not stood up, and I have not said anything, and I've just maybe even just shook my head, listened to him for a little bit, and then, oh, well, hey, I got to go. I'm running late for something, and then leave. Hey, that's great. I left, but why didn't I say anything? I don't know, but it was wrong not to have said anything. It was right when I did the other day. Absolutely. but it wasn't right not to at the times in the past when I haven't. And here's what I'm getting at. And this is why I would answer the question my friend asked earlier when he said, are you really the guy that needs to make this video? Yes, I am. And here's why. I detest politics. I hate politics. I don't like to talk about politics. I don't follow politics. Okay? Once upon a time I did, until I had my fill, and I exited that situation as well. Don't want to hear about it. You know, that's just how I am. Now, in my personal life, the way I live, I will tell you that I err to the right of center. Just putting it out there. And I'm not claiming any allegiance to any political party because I don't. I'm not claiming any allegiance to any political figures because I don't. I'm just telling you that I do believe, because of my own personal experiences, because of my upbringing, largely because of where I'm from, I am conservative in nature. That does not mean I hate people who are not white, straight, heterosexual, which is straight, Protestant, and male. That does not mean that at all. But I've got to hold myself to account here. If I'm willing to state that towards those that are way over here on the right, I think it's about time that I and people like me also start stating that to the people who are way out there. I don't even want to put them on a spectrum, because hate is not political. Hate is hate. Hate is ugly. You don't hate because you belong to a political party of a certain name or of a certain nature. You don't hate because you want to hear something? Here's what I've learned about playing defense against those who are way out there, who want to view me as all these terrible, the intellectual elitist types who maybe want to be able to look down at me and hate me. They want to justifiably hate me in their minds because they're convinced contempt without investigation, contempt prior to investigation, the greatest crime that could ever be committed. But because they hear I'm from Appalachia, they think I'm these things, so they can justifiably hate me. Trying to convince them I'm not those things and trying to change their views of me is a losing battle. You can't change someone's views with facts when their minds are already made up. Okay? I will use an example. I have someone that lives close to me out here who, when he found out that's where I was from, he thought he knew everything about who I was. It took him a couple of years to find out that's not who I was at all. We could be having a conversation, and I did spend a lot of time around this guy because, frankly, I personally just didn't like him that much. But when he'd come by, I would be pleasant, I'd be cordial, I'd be neighborly. But when he finally when he was finally convinced that I was not all those things he wanted me to be so that he could justifiably hate me, he hated me. But hey, at least he doesn't come around anymore. But my point is this. I've been wrong in not making sure that people who were those ugly things, that thought I was those ugly things because of where I'm from, I did not make it clear enough to them I'm not those ugly things like they are. Like I did the guy with whom I had that experience earlier in the week. I'm going to look at this going forward in my life, and I'm going to make sure that when those situations arise for me to do the right thing again, I will, and I will not be complacent. You know, I spent 6 years living in Asia. Of course, the majority of that time was in the Philippines, and I traveled around Asia. There were times, and they weren't, it happened. Listen, I'm just being honest with you here about my experiences, okay? Again, here's my disclaimer. I can only control what I say. I can't control how you take what I say. There were times when I lived in the Philippines when I was treated badly and when I was taken advantage of because I was, because of my skin color and my nationality, viewed as someone who was just rich and had so much money. What did it matter? And during those times, I can remember those times when, here's a specific example, taking a tricycle ride, public transportation from point A to point B. the fare was maybe 8 pesos, okay? When I was new there, before I knew these things, I would be given a ride. I would get out and I would look at the tricycle driver and I'd say, how much? And he'd say, 50 pesos only $1 US. Of course, at the time, the dollar's up now. It was like 37 to 1, but it's 50 to 1 now. So I'm making the math simple. 50 to 1. It's only $1 US, $1 only, just 50 pesos. I'd be like, wow, yeah, that's great. That's cheap. Hand the guy 50 pesos. I would turn around and there would be 3 or 4 Filipinos there. And they would say to me, he cheated you. That guy cheated you. He took advantage of you. That's an 8 pesos ride. And I would say, well, why did you stand here and let him do it? Why didn't you come to my defense? I don't know. And they would say, well, anyway, you're already rich, so what's it matter? That would add insult to the injury that would infuriate me, okay? But the incident that I just went through this week made me question myself and say, how complacent have I been when I've been in the presence of people, ugly-minded people who have heard, oh, you're from Appalachia, then it's okay for me to be a terrible, ugly, nasty, hateful racist in your presence, and maybe drop some inward bombs, maybe say some things about people of different sexual orientations or different gender identifications. How many times has that happened? And maybe those people who they were hating on were not there physically in my presence, but that still doesn't make it right not to speak up and say, you know what? You're entitled to your views, but your views are very much not like my views, and I don't want to be in your presence, and I'm not going to be. And just get up and walk away like I did the other day. I can tell you the answer. The answer to that's 0. Sure, there's been times I've walked away under the guise of saying I had other things to do, or I was late, or I had to be somewhere else. I look at those times now, and I can honestly say that I view those times as cowardice. I was a coward. So, why am I the guy that's got to be the one to make this video? Because this is not an attempt to convince people who are going to judge me and my fellow Appalachian Americans as being all these things we're not. Okay, this isn't playing defense right now to a world audience, potential world audience, because this is social media. This is a plea to so many of you out there who are just like me, white, heterosexual, males, Protestant, conservative in nature, from the South, from Appalachia, from anywhere. If we no longer want it to be assumed by so many, especially the mainstream media, that we're this demon, that they've demonized us into being over the last few years, we do have a say in that. We can stop it. And we can stop it not by playing defense against those who want to look down upon us because they believe that we are these things. We can stop it by confronting those who want to look at us as their equals because they are these things and they assume we are as well. We need to stand up to these people and let them know that we're not. We need to let them know we're not like them. We will not spend time in their presence. It's the only way we can stop this. This is the only way we can stop it. The people who want to demonize us and say we are these things, mainstream media, we can't stop them. That's a big machine that's been rolling for a long time, and it ain't going to stop. The only way we can stop it is stopping it individually on our own by manning up. And when we hear these things, calling the folks out for saying it and then exiting their presence. The overwhelming majority of us are not those things. We can't, for any minute longer, allow those statements to be acceptable in our presence. A lot of times, in understanding who it is that you are and making it clear that other people understand who you are, is making sure that you yourself and I myself understand who we're not, and taking it even further and making sure those around us understand who we are not. Thanks for being here for this video. Thank you all of you who support me in my writing career. The link to all my books are in the description box below. See you for more next time.